So it's been a long time since we've been up here in the museum, but we thought we would do another video for everybody out there. We see that the video is pretty popular on our website, so we wanted to add another one. Today we are here to talk about the Old Soldiers' Home, which most people do not remember because it's been gone so long, but at a time, Veterans Field was home to a bunch of buildings called the Old Soldiers' Home. So I can give you an idea what they had. This is a map of the Old Soldiers' Home. So they had dormitories, they had a hospital, a library, a dining hall and a kitchen, and a boiler house, whatever that is, and a stable. So all these buildings were on Veterans Field as we know it today. So to give you a little bit of the history of that Old Soldiers' Home, it began in 1863 when Marcus Ward petitioned the state legislature for the establishment of the home. The act was passed in 1865, and it was built in 1886 for the cost of $225,000, which was granted by the state for land and construction. So as I mentioned, this site was on Belgrove Drive between Bergen Ave and Afton Street, and it took up about 16 acres of land, so pretty big. I mean, and you know it now as Vets Field, which is pretty large. So it was occupied beginning in 1888 with 276 uniformed veterans. Now, these veterans were mostly from the Civil War, although over its history, it did have veterans from the Indian Wars and Spanish-American War. So during its history, it housed more than 25,000 veterans, which is pretty crazy. So getting back to its history, it's opened in 1888. It was closed in 1932. So June 28th, 1932 was when it was closed. The veterans at the time, there were only 13 of them at that time, and they were moved to a facility in Menlo Park, which still exists. The buildings in Kearny were demolished, of course, although one building still remains, which is the barn from the stable from the original Old Soldiers' Home, which is pictured here. So this is from a Newark News article from 1936 describing how this building was then taken over by the American Legion. So if you know the American Legion building, that is the only remaining building from the Old Soldiers' Home. Which still stands today. So they are in what would have been the barn of the Old Soldiers' Home. So at that time, 1936, the total cost of the alterations to the building was only $2,000, which is pretty crazy. And just to give you some other stats, so this is from the Observer from 1908. Which is earlier than any of the observers we have in our records here. And this is an interesting article which talks about what they needed from at that time to take care of all the veterans. So just to give you an idea, it's very interesting. They had 20 bushels of beans, they had 250 pounds of pearl barley, so it gives you the idea of how many people are there at this time. 5 barrels of mackerel, 4 barrels of salmon, oats, rice, 8,000 pounds of sugar, which is a lot of sugar for old men to be eating, right? Let's see, 100 barrels of flour, 5,000 pounds of something called Timothy hay. Well, I guess that's hay maybe for the horses. Timothy hay. It's the best hay, I'm sure. 10 bags of corn, 2,400 dozen eggs. So interesting. So this is probably, for an entire year, I'm going to hope. Let's see. All beef to be selected. Steer beef only. native corn-fed cattle, 20,000 pounds fores, and 3,200 pounds hindquarters, and then 1,400 loins, and 7,500 plates, whatever that is. Yeah. So just to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that they needed, and it gives you an idea of how many people, like I said, were there at that time. So this is sort of the Kearny History Bible here. This is Heritage and Legacy, published during the town centennial in 1967. So she, Emma May Velarde, who wrote this book, she says that, the veterans were accepted by and became part of the community, participating in the election celebrations and sorrows for a period of 45 years. The home received veterans, like I said, from Civil War, Spanish American, Mexican Frontier War, and eventually World War I. At the turn of the century, an unforgettable sight took place on Memorial Day when the children of Kearny, laden with flowers, helped the old soldiers decorate the graves of their comrades in arms, laid to rest in their own cemetery. So think about that. That was all Kearny. It's hard to believe now. So at the time that it was closed, this is interesting, the total ages represented by the veterans was 1,160 in total. So the oldest senior in age was 93 years. His name was Sylvanus Corson. And the youngster of the group, the youngest, was Willard Perry, who was aged 85. So he was the youngest. So the reason I wanted to talk about the Old Soldiers' Home today is because we have recently gotten a new acquisition that we just put out on display, and it is the original statue from the Old Soldiers' Home. And I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to show it to you. So we are here on site at Vets Field to show you the statue as it now stands. So this is a replica of the original statue that they took down and remade in 2007. And this again is just a soldier. This is not General Kearny. This is just a Civil War soldier. And then we also wanted to show you the American Legion building, which is the one remaining building of the Old Soldiers' Home compound, and that was the barn. And then if we turn around here, we get a view of Vets Field as it exists now, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And now, when you're here, you can imagine all the buildings, that would have stretched from here down to the river as part of the Old Soldiers' Home. And now we're going to go back to the museum and show you the original statue and wrap this up. Okay, so this is our newest acquisition, which is the original statue that was placed at the entrance to the Old Soldiers' Home. So this is going back to 1888, this statue. Most people think this is General Philip Kearny, our namesake, because it looks kind of like him. But it is not. It is actually just a soldier. We found out recently from a visiting scholar who was studying these that this was just a mass-produced soldier that you would have ordered out of a catalog, believe it or not. That you could have ordered as either a Union soldier or a Confederate soldier. So from the same catalog, the southern states were buying these soldiers for their old soldiers' homes and towns as well, which is pretty interesting. So, to give you a little history on this, it was after the home was demolished. We don't know exactly what happened to this statue, but it was found in 1997 in storage at the National Guard Armory in West Orange, which is pretty interesting. And funds were raised, $35,000 were raised for its refurbishment. One of the main people who was raising that money was Bill Stiefel, who is the foremost General Kearny scholar. This is his newest book right here, just to give a plug to Mr. Stiefel. He was just here in the museum doing a lecture on it. So at the time, it was $35,000 that they raised, and what they did was they actually, this is why this is just a bust, they took it apart in pieces so that they could recast it. So the statue that is at the old soldiers' home now, which was cast in bronze, is actually cast from the same statue that stood there in 1888, interestingly. But if you are interested in seeing the original statue, that is here. And an interesting fun fact is the hand, which was missing when it was found, they actually used Mr. Stiple's hand to recast it because they needed a hand. So that is the hand on the current statue that stands at the Vetsfield Belgrove Drive, is actually William Stiple's hand. So the old town historian, that's his hand. That was pretty interesting stuff. So, as mentioned, if you want to stop by and take a look, the museum is open again to the public. We are open on Saturdays at 10 a.m. We open till noon, and we're also open Wednesday evenings at 5 o'clock for, I think, 5 to 6:30 is our current time. So stop by and see us in the library, see us in the museum. We will be here. Thank you for tuning in.